everybody, and welcome to another fantastic session from the FuturePrint Virtual Summit. I've been personally looking forward to this one all day, and it really does build on an incredible wealth of educational and inspirational content that has been already delivered so far during the conference. Now, I have the great pleasure and privilege to introduce you to Lucy Swanston, who will be chairing this session. Now, since 2005, Lucy has been the managing director of her own agency and a stickler for doing what she does best, creating marketing solutions that, in her words, increase sales, improve brand awareness, and deliver beyond expectation and results. And in fact, one of Lucy's favorite quotes, which is quoting the late great graphic designer Vaughan Oliver, "If print was invented tomorrow, it would be the death of digital." Now, I will leave it to Lucy to introduce you to our next special guest, who is Marion Stefani. But on to this talk and giving a little bit of an idea about what you can expect. So, how do you move from selling primarily on price to instead being able to engage with your customers in a meaningful way before delivering them a highly effective solution to their marketing challenges that adds value to their business? In this session, Lucy will explore this exact question by drawing on her extensive experience in the print and marketing industries. A real live customer campaign will then be explored as she talks to Marion about the work they have done together to publicize her business, Natural Animal Nutrition, through print and significantly increase its market share in doing so. So without further ado, Lucy, Marion, over to you.
Right, thanks very much, Brendan, and welcome everyone, and thanks for joining the session today. I've got a good friend and customer today that wears multiple hats. Most of you will probably know her as the CEO of the IPIA, that's the Independent Print Industries Association, but today she's going to be wearing a different one. So, Marion, from Natural Animal Nutrition, a pet food company based in Northamptonshire in the UK. We're going to be talking today about how Nutshell Creative and Nan worked together when we identified an opportunity between us during lockdown that we've subsequently built upon and delivered a marketing campaign that incorporates print. So hi Marion, thanks for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about Nan and why you set up the business?
Thanks, Lucy. Great to be with you, and thank you for asking me to join the session. So lots of people know me from my very long print industry career, first of all with Red Tie and then with the IPAA. But one of my huge passions in life is animals. My dogs are a huge part of my life. About 30 years ago, I got really interested in feeding a natural diet and feeding raw, and I started to feed all my dogs raw. Saw massive health benefits. And it became a bit of a mission of mine to try and build on that and encourage lots of friends to feed their dogs raw as well. So that led to me starting a small business in Northamptonshire, where I live, and we actually make and manufacture raw frozen dog food, completely natural, and it's amazing. It does so much for dogs' health and welfare. So that's how we started. And obviously, as you just said, lockdown came along and we thought it was the right idea to try and promote the business during this time.
How many dogs have you got now, by the way?
I've got 5.
Okay, so just to build on what you were saying there, actually, in terms of you thought it was the right time, during lockdown, many businesses and still, now are presented with many, many challenges. One of which is, should you be being proactive with your marketing and spending budget on campaigns to promote it, or shouldn't you? What was your thoughts on that, and just building
Yeah, I think that history has told us that the more proactive you become when there's a problem, the more likely you are to succeed. And I don't mean that you should do stupid stuff, but you've got to develop a strategy that helps you grow your business. We're tiny. We're a tiny, tiny business, but I wanted to grow. And I just felt that while people were at home and shut in and not necessarily leaving for the office in the morning, it might be the right idea and the right time to try and reach them where they could potentially get information about feeding raw and then give them some compelling reason to actually try our products. Feeding raw is not like just going to buy another brand of dog food. You have to really think about it. You need to get all the information. You need to make a lifestyle choice change for you and your dog. So it's not something you can do without helping people to be more aware of what we offer. So I wanted to get a campaign in that people would actually pay attention to and spend the time learning about. And I thought lockdown was the perfect time to do that. The dog food industry is huge. I mean, I think there are 10 million dogs plus in the UK, something like a 14 billion revenue stream. It's massive. People spend a lot of money on their dogs. We're, as I said to you, a very small business, but we occupy a niche that is growing, and I just thought it was the right time to really push that forward.
Okay, thank you. So we were having a chat about many things as we do, and we moved on to the whole pet food phenomenon as we see it in lockdown, and we started to chat through what objectives we could actually set in delivering this campaign. This is what resulted in our conversation. Do you just want to talk through?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was very good is that we already had a relationship with you. So you were already doing design work for us, and you already sort of understood the products. So as we were chatting, I think these highlight very well what I was trying to achieve. First of all, we wanted to educate the person who received the marketing material about raw feeding. We knew that we would hit a certain number of people who were perhaps already feeding raw, but generally people don't know much about it. So it was about education. We wanted to grow our database. We have a very small customer base. We know a lot about our individual customers, but we don't have a big marketing database. So we wanted to collect more information. To sort of touch those people that perhaps were already thinking about raw, we wanted to get more brand awareness into our local area so that if anyone was thinking about switching, they would look to our brand. And then overall, I knew that from the cost of what we were looking to do, we needed to get at least 10 long-term customers. Once people decide to feed their dog raw and once people try our food, they very rarely leave us and it becomes a regular weekly or monthly order. So we knew 10 long-term customers was going to be enough to cover the campaign and make a profit on it, which was the last of our objectives, not to be out of pocket, because it was a huge amount of money that we were going to spend relative to the size of our business.
But interestingly, we didn't touch on cost of the actual print item at this point, did we? We were having more of a strategic conversation around what you wanted the outcomes to be and what the cost would then be attributed to that. Yeah, it was all about, I don't think you should start any marketing campaign on a cost conversation, which is where we think, you and I both think the print industry sometimes gets a little bit astray. I needed to achieve, I wanted to grow my business. That was my main objective. And then setting out to you how much each customer was worth and what we were trying to achieve, setting realistic objectives was all our conversation was. We didn't touch on price once. Okay, so moving on from the objectives, we came back to the studio and had conversations with designers, developers, etc., and planned out exactly what we were going to deliver in terms of the comms and the structure of the campaign. First of which was the door drop, which was distributed to 35,000 homes in the Northamptonshire area within a 15-mile radius of your factory. Do you want to talk through how you felt that was delivered and how we delivered against those objectives in terms of the messaging and the mechanisms within that leaflet?
Yeah, I think it's just worth reiterating that like many, many small businesses, we don't have a huge marketing database, and nor did we really have the budget to go and buy one, because obviously feeding raw isn't appropriate to everybody. So when we started looking at the door drop, it was about using our customer profiles to create a sensible area for the door drop. And then we wanted people to see a catchy, eye-catching leaflet that would address their dog's health issues and talk about naturally feeding their dog. And at the same time, getting rid of some of the myths around raw feeding, things that, you know, whenever you mention it, people say, oh yes, but you can't feed bone and you should be feeding a balanced diet. We wanted to address those myths very quickly and simply with a really eye-catching leaflet. And then obviously, once we'd done that, we needed a very strong call to action. So for me, the designs that you came up with based on our brief were great, because we knew that we liked it and we thought it delivered the content we needed. And then I believe we ran it through the Whistle tool, the I tool, which shows you, I can never get the name right, but that tool that looks at the creative and actually says to you that it's got a good chance of catching attention. So I thought it was great. And obviously, once we sent it out, we had lots and lots of people commenting. People who knew me said, "Oh, we got one through our door. It was amazing." And then people just calling us and asking questions. So it obviously did its job. It was very eye-catching and a very strong call to action, delivered to a database, not a database, but a door drop profile that we'd driven from our existing customer base.
As a result of the door drop, we then drove people to the landing page. How did that work for you, Marion, in terms of data capture, for example, and ongoing communications?
Okay, so the idea was that we would use the leaflet to drive something that people could redeem online. So it drove to a landing page where the next item was that they could download a much more comprehensive guide and that we could collect data. So by filling in a very simple form and agreeing to allow us to have that data, we then gave people a very comprehensive guide to feeding raw. That was the next stage of the campaign. And then from this download, it generated an email which we sent, which gave a discount code. So the final part of the offer was a discount code of 25% off their order. And then their first order, they also received a book by a really well-known vet talking about the value of feeding. So feeding raw. So it was a really strong call to action, from the leaflet to the landing page, to the download of the PDF, to the generation of another offer which came via email, which meant that people were encouraged to buy.
Okay, so we haven't touched on cost so far. In terms of the actual campaign costs, we worked it out that it equated to roughly 10% of your turnover, which, you know, is a huge commitment for a small business. How comfortable did you feel within this process? And just take the IPIA hat stroke print industry knowledge off for a minute, and describe how comfortable you felt with it, but whether you would need that reassurance along the way in terms of you know, credible research that supports, you know, case studies and activity where people have been successful with this before. Do you think that would be something that you would need more of if you were to take that hat off?
Definitely. It really helped that we had a relationship with you anyway, so that, you know, you were explaining every step of the way. I think the bit that I got reassured from was the fact that we could profile our existing customers for the door drop. It wasn't just a blanket door drop. We did some analytics with Whistle, who helped us. But then I think it was just looking at and understanding that actually we'd set a very, very achievable objective. We only needed 10 customers from this 35,000 door drop. And I think you and I talked about that a lot, and talked about the fact that if we understood the number of people that had dogs, the way that raw feeding is gaining traction, and the number of households that we were going to hit, I think that gave me reassurance. We didn't need to win very many customers from that 35,000 in order to make the campaign cover its cost and then pay for itself. So I think giving me all that information, even if I hadn't known how effective print is at the start, I think as a small business, I'd have been very confident to go ahead with this, just simply because we'd set reasonable objectives and we'd talked through what we were trying to achieve in real detail.
Good, okay. It's exciting to see the results, Marion. A lot of them you can see here speak for themselves, but if you could just talk them through, that'd be great.
So yeah, I mean, we've been delighted. As you know, we only needed 10 customers, long-term customers. I think at the time you did these results, we'd actually got 25, and it's more now. We're gaining probably another customer or two a month from the campaign. We had to extend it in the end and extend the offer. And I think our revenue is up here at this point it was 23% or so. I think it's increased even more. And we've also got a database of people who have engaged and downloaded the PDF but haven't yet bought. So we've got a further database to market to. But we're absolutely delighted. We well exceeded our expectations. It's been a really great campaign for us.
Good, good. I'm pleased. I mean, in terms of, seeing a small business thrive in these challenging times is certainly very rewarding, particularly from, our side of things, when you see marketing campaigns that deliver and work. And, most importantly, are combining print and digital channels. So just to wrap up for a minute, there is certainly an opportunity here, I would say, and I think you'll probably agree with me. At the moment, there's about 5.6 million micro businesses within the UK. That was in 2019, so maybe there is slightly less now. But that accounts for 96% of our businesses at the moment. So in terms of micro businesses, us as an industry pitching to those businesses and printers capitalising on that opportunity, how do you think they can go about that and negating the whole selling on price scenario that we're desperately trying to avoid?
Yeah, I think it's really a fantastic opportunity, and you and I have been banging on about this for years. I mean, it's a real bugbear of mine. We don't do ourselves any favours in the print industry. If I take my Nan hat off and go back to my print industry hat, we don't do ourselves any favours because we don't necessarily look at the outcome of print. We just look at selling on price. I would have been, as a small micro business like Nan, I don't think any printer would ever have approached me and asked me to spend 10% of my turnover on print based on an unknown outcome. But once you and I worked together and we really made some realistic objectives, it became a complete no-brainer for us to do this. But nobody in all the time I've run now, in the last 5 years, has ever approached me about doing print for me. Or if they have, it's just been about, do you do any printing? Can I give you a quote? It was me being proactive with you that resulted in this campaign. There are millions and millions of small businesses out there that our industry could approach with a really credible conversation around return on investment that we just don't do because we don't see the opportunity. But it's there and it's real, and we should be out there talking to these businesses about what print can do for them, not just ringing up to say, oh, do you do any print? Can I give you a quote? And I think that's reflected worldwide. In my experience with Red Tie, when I was going all around the world and visiting printer after printer, it was very rare that I saw a printer who had truly understood the marketing conversation they needed to have. So I think that's where the opportunity and the frustration lies with both you and I.
Yeah, I think to summarise, developing a long-term relationship and partnerships with people, with your customer and your suppliers, is really where the heart of the conversations happen, and we can be more strategic, we can be more helpful, and that in turn delivers long-term growth and, long-standing partnerships.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult because not necessarily does the print industry have marketing skills. I think that where a printer can perhaps get themselves educated about marketing, it may not be enough. I think forging relationships with the marketing industry, working in partnership with companies like yours who offer those services, finding local graphic designers, local marketing agencies that can help them have those conversations is really important. And I think one thing the pandemic has done is it's created many, many more partnerships in our industry. And I'd like to think that that's one area that we'll start to see a change in. If as a printer you don't have the skills to have those conversations, then go out and find a competent, reliable partner that can have that conversation for you so that you are able to go to small micro businesses like Nan and actually offer something that is not about price, but is about delivering an outcome.
Good. Okay, thank you. Great summary. So there is actually another aspect to this where printers could be encouraging their customers to access government funding that's available to them at the moment, which in turn will support their marketing activities. I mean, you can get anywhere between sort of 30 and 40% in contribution to that. And yes, there's some form filling to do, etc. But a lot of micro businesses have been taking opportunities from their learning and enterprise partnerships that are local to them, and really making good use of the money. So I think we've covered quite a lot there, Marion, haven't we?
I think the interesting thing about talking about what we did with NAN is the fact that we are such a tiny business and not an obvious target. And as you've just said, there is funding available to help micro businesses do their marketing. And really, the print industry should be pushing people to get that grant money and then spend it on print that actually gives them return on investment. So I think that's well worth mentioning, that you don't just have to go along to your potential customer and say, how about doing a campaign? You could open their eyes to the fact there is actually funding available to support them doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for joining the call today. I'm going to hand back over to Brendan now.
I really, really enjoyed that session. I think the interaction between the two of you, the obvious chemistry, how you come up with this incredible campaign, the results obviously delivered for you, Marion, just, it's fascinating to see how a modern consultative-led approach has delivered value to natural animal nutrition. And Lucy, how you're able to articulate that conversation. And I think the real purpose of this session and what it's been trying to demonstrate is that this is possible. I mean, in a small way, not obviously maybe quite as developed a fashion, but certainly to at least start the conversation for commercial printers, to start having these type of engagements with their customers. And the question that to both of you, and I'll start with you, Lucy, is in this difficult time when so many print businesses are facing the loss of maybe their traditional markets or feeling like they can't find a way through, there is actually some opportunity for them to use that creative resource internally, speak to their customers and actually find new customers and do a similar approach that you have taken. Do you think that's possible?
Totally. I mean, what the printer needs to do is look at the sectors that they're currently working in, where they're seeing success and where they're not, and indeed looking at the economy and industries as a whole, and where there is growth. We were talking earlier, 96% of the business landscape is made up of micro businesses, versus however many printers there are just in the UK. Surely there is some opportunity there for them to be able to have that strategic conversation with them. And it doesn't need to be complicated. You don't need to be, a CIM qualified marketeer. It's just about common sense and having the ability to say, right, we're not just going to do print, but we're going to actually combine some channels. We're going to understand what creative is needed, what messages are there, going back to the objectives that we defined with NAN, and simply working through that. And if you don't feel confident having the conversation, then, partner with somebody that can. Yeah.
And Marion, the question to you, probably before we had the brick wall of COVID, 80% of our industry probably classified themselves as factories, almost. They were manufacturers and factories that had a design element, that had a creative element, but that was their kind of manufacturing focus. Can we do it cheaper, faster, at the same level of quality? And 20% were consultative. They had that consultative ability. They turned themselves into kind of mini print management and marketing agencies almost. Now, with COVID having made this major impact, do you think the time for change for those 80% can be delayed any further? Can it be kicked down the road to 4 or 5 years, as was the case before? Or do they have to make that change today?
I think there are always going to be some companies that survive on that competitive pricing. It's part of the nature of any manufacturing business. But for most businesses, they have to change the way they deal with their customers. There are massive opportunities out there. If you think that our industry has challenges through COVID, can you imagine all those micro businesses who need to now reach people in a different way? They possibly need to get their message to them in their home, or catching them in a different place other than their workplace. So there's a huge opportunity because COVID has changed the way that those micro businesses behave, for our industry to make a change in how they behave, taking on that more consultative approach, looking at the outcomes that they need to achieve with print, and quite literally finding out how they can support those micro businesses in growing. That's what we should be doing. So I don't think that can be delayed. I think it's a huge part of what our industry has to do, and I think it's got to be done quickly and in order to save those businesses that are going to struggle as they come out of COVID.
Okay, well, last question to both of you. You're both talented, experienced, driven, and passionate entrepreneurs. If you were to start a print business tomorrow, which of course neither of you would do, you would never jump over that fence again. But if you were to start a print business tomorrow, what would that print business look like? So Marion, I'll come to you first.
Okay, so I think for me, it would be a digital print business. It will be a consultative print business. It would have a design and marketing arm to it, or it would have a strong partnership with a design and marketing company. And I would also be probably print managing. I would be looking at how I could take the best of the industry and how I would be able to offer my clients everything across the board, but definitely digital, definitely consultative based, and definitely with a strong creative drive to it to fulfill marketing needs. That's how I would do it.
Okay, so Lucy, I'll bring the question to you now as well.
What would I do if I was going to set up a print business? I think I would set up an educational print business that would be tailored to children. I'm quite passionate about empowering children to read the printed word and combine that with digital. So yeah, I would very much be focused on education around children's literacy and learning, and the byproduct of that educational resource would be the printed word, but it'd be predominantly an online print business.
And in fact, with home learning now very much a reality for tens of thousands of families, as we continue to chart these interesting waters that we live in at the moment, that certainly seems like a good idea. So without further ado, Lucy, Marion, thank you so much for the time to prepare and create this very interesting and insightful session for the FuturePrint Virtual Summit. Thank you to all the delegates for the time you have taken to watch this summit. If you want to find out any further information about Lucy or Marion, please check out their speaker profile on the website. Please do get in contact with them and ask them questions. If you want to check out this session, if you missed anything, if you weren't taking notes, you can check it all out on the replays, which will be instantly available slightly later today. So you can go back and watch this session as many times as you like at your leisure. So otherwise, thank you again. And we will all see you on the next session, which will be beginning in just a moment on the FuturePrint Virtual Summit.